It is yet again time for breaking down another word, because Marxists want to control everything, and to do that, Marxists want to control the dictionary. Because if they control your language, and they control the vocabulary you use and the meanings of those vocabulary, they can control you. I'm here to push back against that and to offer you reasonable truth from a biblical perspective, pushing back against Marxism, pushing back against wokeness. So today we're going to be talking about the word egalitarian. The word egalitarian is being twisted. It's being twisted very suddenly. It's being twisted by numerous people saying like exactly the same things at the same time, which is really weird. You know, you've probably seen those videos out there. The leftist mainstream media, wherever their overlords live, they will send headlines, and then all of the anchors will say almost exactly the same thing at the same time.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Really weird, really fishy. Anybody with eyeballs in their heads would obviously know that this is a coordinated effort to deceive people. So, whenever we see this from the media, even from people pretending to be conservatives, like this, or like this.
Also, we have stood against egalitarianism in race.
Our eyebrows ought to raise a little bit. We ought to look at what these people are trying to push. We ought to look at who their friends are, the people who they've defended, and the people who defend them, and we ought to avoid them because they're the bad guys, and it couldn't be more obvious. Because I love pointing out the internal hypocrisy and inconsistency in woke arguments, I am going to look at this idea of egalitarianism and how it's being twisted. So here's how they're using it. Traditionally, egalitarianism has always been kind of a bad word in conservative Christian circles, and I agree with that. I think egalitarianism, in the way that it has commonly been understood historically over the past few decades, is a bad thing. It's not good. And that is this. There have been traditionally two different approaches to understanding the roles of men and women. There is complementarianism, which is to say that men and women have complementary roles, where they do not have the same biblical roles, like women cannot do everything, biblically speaking, that men can do, and men cannot do everything that women can do. For example, men cannot bear children, right? But men's role in that is complementary in bearing children, and so they work together to accomplish this greater goal. But men cannot themselves do the action of bearing children. And this primarily comes into the argument of being a pastor. One of the things that the Bible very clearly and obviously defines as a role for men alone is being a pastor. Women can't be pastors. And so that is why complementarianism has been traditionally the position of conservatives for a very long time. The alternative view is egalitarianism. Egalitarianism meaning equalism, that men and women can have exactly the same roles. Everything men can do, women can do, and vice versa, maybe except for the physical stuff. So I think that is one obvious internal inconsistency in egalitarianism. If somebody's body cannot do the same stuff as somebody else's body, as men's bodies cannot do the same thing as women's bodies, why would their other physical roles not work the same way? You know? So there very clearly is a difference between men and women, and they can have these complementary roles and fit together. And that's totally true. So egalitarianism is a progressive, liberal invention to be like feminist, essentially. Like through feminism, egalitarianism in the church grew in popularity. And another view that is essentially complementarianism, but it's more of a hard line position on complementarianism, is patriarchy, patriarchalism. I've heard people, even though like there are these two views, like the two views encompass both sides of the argument, complementarianism, egalitarianism. But some people nowadays, because they want to be edgy and come up with, hard words to really define their position, is patriarchy. And that's okay to do that. But I've been in conversations with people where they're like, complementarians are bad. And it's like, what? You're a complementarian. They're like, no, I'm a patriarchalist. And it's like, you just don't understand the argument is what's happening. You just want to disagree with people. So some of those people exist, right? Some people who call them, I would call myself a patriarchalist, but I'm also not going to say that that complementarians are bad, because, there are a lot of complementarians that are bad. There are inconsistent complementarians. But there's also a lot of patriarchalists who are bad, and a lot of inconsistent patriarchalists, a lot of tyrants, a lot of people who love tyranny and want to oppress their wives and shut people down who disagree with them. That's all really bad stuff. And so those people exist, absolutely. And so I'm not going to have those arguments with people about like, these, patriarchalists are bad. No, the idea is fine. Like, patriarchy exists. There is a hierarchy, and husbands are heads of their wives, like Christ is the head of the church. That's true. And so that's where the term patriarchalism comes from. But anyway, that is the traditional understanding of egalitarianism. But how is it being applied today? Well, in the posts that I showed earlier, a lot of the woke right people, the people who call themselves conservatives, but are essentially pushing identity politics, racial categories, and Marxism, it's Marxism. It's Marxism. Let's just call it what it is. Totally evil, completely anti-Christian. These Marxists are pushing this idea that egalitarianism, which has typically put a bad taste in the mouths of conservative Christians, they're applying it to race. And they're saying that race is not egalitarian. Race is complementary. There are different races with different abilities and, whatever. Like, the races are fundamentally different. There is this division, and not recognizing this division is exactly like not recognizing the division between male and female. Do you see the twisting that's happening? There are insubstantial differences, yes, between races. But the difference between me and a person of a different color than me is far, far less than the difference between physical capabilities of me and a woman. The ability, like, me and a Chinese man both function approximately exactly the same. There are insignificant depending on the gauges we're using, some of them could be significant, but it's a lot less significant than being able to bear children versus not being able to bear children. And so this is a perfect example of what the woke right, the Marxists, love to do, which is to control the dictionary and to change the definitions of words on you. Especially, watch out for this tactic, they want to use the connotations of words more than the actual meanings of the words themselves. Because the connotation of the word egalitarianism is bad, right? And so, of course, they want to say, well, obviously, there are differences between different ethnicities of people, which is true. That's a fact. That's true. I agree. But then they apply this word to it, egalitarianism, that has this negative connotation, and they say, well, if you believe that races are similar, you're an egalitarian. And we as conservative Christians, we don't like egalitarians. They're the bad guys. And so what you want to be, because of course as conservative Christians we hate egalitarians, we want to be complementarian, which means we need to believe that there are significant, substantial differences between different races of people, between different ethnicities, between different skin colors, fundamental differences. This is bad. This is unbiblical in not only that, but in the kingdom. There's a wonderful verse in the Bible that says, watch out for those who create divisions and divide with them. And so that is exactly what we should be doing with people like this. We should be dividing them because these divisions are unsubstantial. They are not significant. The difference between men and women are much more significant than the difference between any kind of physical capability of ethnicities. This is pushing the church down the line towards things like anti-Semitism, towards Nazism, towards, some fake right-wing version of critical race theory, social justice. This is all just stuff that we've seen before in the past few years, but it's wearing a new face. And this is obviously a concerted, a coordinated effort between these people and all their buddies. They're like, hey, we should push that egalitarianism is a bad word because we want to make people racist. And so we want to convince people that race applies to egalitarianism, and that's a bad thing because we all want to be complementarians, right? Right. This is bad. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the twisting of words and the changing of the dictionary. Like, words can naturally change meaning on their own, and we should honestly try to see the way people are defining words. But if people have evil definitions of words, or if they're obviously trying to change the definitions of words for evil reasons to try to push their ideology, thank God the people who are pushing this are so obviously evil. I guess it's not obvious to a lot of people. I think those people are blind. But thank God people like Michael Spangler, people like Joel Webbin are at this point so obviously, if you're following anything they say, it's obvious if you've got your eyes open that they are evil, disqualified men from ministry. They have no business being anywhere near a pulpit for various reasons, not just because of individual things like this that they say, but because of things like lacking self-control, because of things like not being above reproach in the things that they say, not being able to actually teach biblical truth. All of these things apply, and a lot more to these people because they're vile monsters and they're Marxists at heart, and they're trying to corrupt the world. They're trying to, in the name of Christ, make you hate people, and that's not what Christianity is about. One of my professors at seminary one time said, if you're reading the Bible in such a way that makes you not love God or your neighbors more, you're reading it wrong. Because we know that is the culmination of all of the words of God. God, the greatest two commands is to love God and love your neighbor. All of the laws and the writings point to those. And so if we read any of the Bible and it makes us love God or love our neighbor or people, people who aren't us, neighbor in this case, like love other people, love God, love people, not just, they would say, well, I love my next door neighbor if they look like me, but I don't love people halfway across the planet. That's not my neighbor. That's foolish. That's evil, right? God wants you to love people no matter where they are. There is a different kind of love that can be expressed for people who are within proximity to you. Sure, absolutely. There is a different responsibility that we have to people that are in proximity to you. But it's not like you shouldn't be loving image bearers of God. If people are obviously evil, don't listen to what they say. But I will be here to examine their hypocrisy and their fundamental internal inconsistencies for you and chronicle how they love to change the dictionary, because this wasn't a thing just a couple weeks ago. My last video, they weren't talking about this a couple weeks ago. So they love to change the dictionary, and don't let them do it.